John, you want to tell them what you'd like to discuss on this?
Well, what I would like to, since ITD, have they responded yet to the traffic study that was done?
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Weber, yes, they have. They received the traffic study last week, as did the city, and we've already received responses back from ITD, so they turned it around in 3 or 4 days.
They did?
They have, yes.
Okay.
And they have a number of comments on the study that they feel need to be addressed. They felt there were some issues that were not adequately approached and some questions about the addition of some of the manuals that were being used, some of the changes in the warrants and rules that came along with that. So yes, they have responded, and they do have comments back to us, which we are, I believe, have conveyed or are about to convey back to the applicant.
Gary, did you have a comment you want to make on that?
Yeah, the only comment I would make is that when this was seen by Public Works Finance Committee, at that time, the applicants came forward on the lot division request. Mike Ray from Community Development was handling it at that time, and indicated that they did not feel that ITD, or at least they were concerned that ITD would not give an approval of the traffic study in time for the discussion of the lot division, and also which leads to the issuance of the building permit. So at that time, committee discussed it. There was a question as to whether or not our Public Works Director could review the traffic study ahead of time and make comments about it, which Les said, of course, well, he could look at it, but ITD needed to approve it. At that time, the applicant was, again, concerned that they would not meet the conditions of the development agreement or the conditions of the lot division, so wanted to be able to bring that to council in the regular agenda. At that time, the direction was to proceed in hopes that ITD would be able to give their approval prior to this meeting tonight. That has not occurred, although they have made comments on it. My understanding is that the applicant would like the ability to address the council on the removal of the condition of the lot division, the condition of an approved traffic study by ITD as a condition of the lot division approval. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor.
Bill's giving me a quizzical look.
Walter's got a question he wants to ask while we're waiting for this. What do you want, Walter?
For anyone on the staff, could you refresh my memory on the history of the ITD traffic study, how it fits into all of this, when it occurred, what the requirements are, please?
I think I can probably do that. When the original subdivision development occurred back in about 2000, 2001 timeframe, part of the process was that the city had to apply to ITD for a new street intersection with US 95. That being Rodeo Drive. And ITD approved that with the conditions that if a time was reached that a traffic signal or other such improvements were required to allow traffic to flow appropriately at that intersection, that the city be responsible for installing those facilities, not ITD. With the subdivision, there was also then a development agreement between the city and the developer that stated that if improvements were required, as determined by a traffic study, that the developer would take on that responsibility on behalf of the city to install those improvements, traffic signal, additional lanes, whatever it might be. So there have actually been 2 development agreements that have occurred over the years that address that issue, that indicate that as development occurred on specifically Lot 1, Block 1, by that time there would be a traffic study completed, and that it would have to be approved by ITD prior to the issuance of any building permits on that portion of the subdivision. Okay. Now, the city has subsequently allowed some development on Lot 1, Block 1, such as the most recent duplex development that's over on Jefferson Street on the east side of this area. So at this point, there are development agreements in place that state that the developer will perform a traffic engineering study to assess the impacts of the entire subdivision okay, not just what we're talking about right now, but the entire subdivision dating back to 2000, early 2000s, and that any mitigation that was necessary, as determined by that traffic study approved by ITD, would be borne by the developer. So that set of development agreements is still in place today. And then with the lot division process that we're discussing last week and this week, one of the conditions that was recommended be placed upon the lot division was that that traffic study be completed in conformance with that development agreement with the approval by ITD prior to issuance of building permits. That's the one clause, as I understand it, that the applicants have concern about, was that whether or not that would slow them down. What we've seen since that time is that ITD has been very responsive, turning it around in less than a week. They do have comments, as will the city, and that process will continue. What the recommendation I made last week at committee was that, actually 2 weeks ago now, excuse me, was that our history with ITD is that they were very responsive on these types of study reviews. We expected them to turn it around quickly, which turns out they have done. And then we just suggested letting this run its course, because we had not yet received any applications for building on this parcel that's being created, and that will take time to get through a building permit process. It's pretty likely that concurrently running with that, the traffic study would be completed in a timely manner. If that was not the case, and we found that the study was slowing it down to the point that it would create a problem with the building permit advancing, then recommended that the council reconsider or readdress that topic at that time. Right now, we're at the point that ITD has been responsive, and at least for me, my recommendation is that we continue down that course that I suggested 2 weeks ago, which is let it run and let the process continue to go until we encounter a problem, and then we can readdress it if needed.
Follow up?
Gary's got a question. He wants to insert
Okay, so
something.
so you're saying that the condition could be removed on the lot division process and addressed at the time a building permit were due to be issued?
It could be addressed, yes. It could be taken off the lot division process because it's already in the development agreement and will remain there unless the council chooses to modify the development agreement. So that condition is still there, and it still says that before building permits are issued, ITD approval of the traffic study is necessary.
So for council's edification, how long do we expect a building permit process to take?
Well, for that, I would refer to our community development director.
So from the time receipt of the plans, the initial review would be completed within 10 business days, depending upon the number of corrections and the time that it would take for us to get a resubmission in response to those corrections. Typically, that process takes another 7 to 10 days. So generally it's about a 30-day process, sometimes a little bit less from that initial submission. We have not yet received any building plans for the project as of today, to my knowledge.
Gary, I'll get back to John.
So at this point, if the council were to remove it as a condition of the lot division process and approve the lot division tonight, there would be time in your estimation to, that we could expect that we would likely see the traffic study approved through ITD?
I guess the one thing I'd comment is the recommended condition was that they complete the traffic study prior to the issuance of building permits.
Okay.
It is the exact same language that's in the development agreement, so they're removing the condition from the lot division has no effect unless you're going to modify the development agreement to remove that.
I'll go back to Gary.
Yeah, if the council recalls, some time ago, the same developer came in and requested that the easternmost part of the large lot could be, I guess, rezoned, correct? Am I correct? Was that where the duplex lots were? That was rezoned, correct?
Correct. As part of the replat, the single lot was divided into 7 lots, the 6 residential lots with zoning change on the eastern boundary of the site, and then you had the remainder of Lot 1 of Block 1. There was a subsequent lot line adjustment with Moscow Building Supply for the southern portion of the site, and then the lot division for the original Meineke lot that was now being adjusted through this lot line adjustment.
And the council at that time then modified the development agreement to allow development of those duplex lots and not require a traffic study prior to the development of the duplex lots. So I think what staff is saying at this time is that you could approve the lot line adjustment as it is worded in the agenda tonight, and then, in the meantime, prior to the issuance of the building permit, if the traffic study is not completed at that time, then the council could review the development agreement and direct that, if the council, in its discretion, wanted to modify the development agreement to allow the building permit to be issued on this lot prior to the traffic study being completed, which is the same process the council followed with the duplex lots on the east side.
John, I'll go to John, then I'm going to come back to Walter.
So it appears to me that we've got two parts of a development agreement, both of which say the developers are going to be responsible for putting in a traffic signal or whatever, if that is what comes about. And since we've already got two that say, two pieces of paper that say that they're going to have to shoulder the cost one way or the other, the city will not have to, then to me it doesn't seem to be a big stretch to do exactly what we did with the duplexes and issue the building permit without the information coming back from ITD, because regardless of whatever that information is, the developers are still going to be responsible for putting in whatever traffic slowing, calming revisions are required. Is that correct?
I think you meant lot line adjustment.
Gary,
Pardon me? I think you meant lot line adjustment.
Gary,
You said
I'll
building
address
permit.
it.
No, I don't mean lot line. I think the lot line adjustment, we should be able to take the agreement statements, sentences out, do the lot line adjustment, and then issue the building permits, because the city has already got the developer on the hook for whatever needs to be done in the future. And if the developer is concerned at this point that the process is taking too long, which I think is the concern of the developer, then I think since the city is not going to be in any way going to be harmed financially or any other way, then I think we could do that, get the process moving, and then when the city has its say over the traffic study and the ITD has its say over the traffic study, and then they sit down and work out a deal, then we move ahead with that. But at the same time, we have given the developer or the buyer of the property a building permit so they can start the process of getting their business up and running. And I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone other than me.
I'll let Gary answer that. Go over to
Well, the
Walter.
building permit, as Bill indicated, there need to be plans submitted. Those plans need to be reviewed, probably sent back for modifications, and then reviewed again before the building permit is issued, a
Right.
period of approximately 30 days. I think we're getting into an issue here is that last time this happened, it came through as a modification of the development agreement. Here it's being tied to a lot line adjustment. So perhaps this could be handled by the council could approve the lot line adjustment as presented, direct staff, if you desire, to allow this property to develop prior to the traffic study being completed. We could bring it back to you at committee, and that could be done well in advance of the building permit being approved, I'm assuming, or the plans being reviewed and
Because there is no building permit at this point
to be
in time.
issued at this
Okay.
point.
Walter
anyway.
had a